Welcome back everyone. I'm going to go over the details for the upcoming competition happening on May 21st, 2024, which features the wine case meta. Wine case is a new item added to the game and part of the wine production chain. If you've ever done a wine design before, it's almost the exact same thing, but we're just adding one more step to it. Now, about a year ago, I did create a full guide for wine specifically for Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you do need more help creating your design or getting an idea on how to start and then proceeding to build the design, then I do recommend that you watch that video. I'll leave a link to it in the description. But after I go over the details for this competition, I do have a build showcase prepared to give you a really good idea on how to make a very competitive wine case build without requiring the use of any NFTs. As always, you can find the official details in the Common Ground World Announcements channel in the Gala Games Discord, and I'll leave a link to the Gala Games Discord in the description of the video. Competition will begin May 21st, 2024 and end 3 days later. Meta is to sell wine cases. Trade time is 200 seconds and 2 gasoline per trade. The biome is a desert facing west. It will include an oil seep, and the biome edges are a mountain on the north, a desert on the east, a river on the south, and another desert on the west. They did provide us with an image at the starting town, so you can see the oil seep right there closer to the northeast edge. And you do start off with 2 sheep pens, 2 tree farms, 2 wheat fields, and a small setup to create feed for the sheep. You also have the tractor, some ranchers, and a storehouse, lumberjack, and a lumberyard. A basic setup to get you started with wool production. The cash boost for this competition will be wool going from 3,750 to 15,000 each, so it's going to be 4 times the cash, making wool probably your best option for cash rush. I know I always recommend people to do gold rush, and usually it's the way to go, but wool has been greatly cash boosted for this one, so I highly recommend doing wool if you don't have any NFTs to do any of the other ones. So the other cash boost will be wool yarn from 20,250 to 81,000. This is a very good boost, but getting to wool yarn would require you to build fabric plants, which you don't actually need for this final design, so it's not very optimal to do this. Then you have iron from 4,600 to 18,400, another very good alternative since you're going to be making mines anyways, so you could transition from wool to iron pretty quickly if you wanted to do so. So this could also be another great option to get all the cash that you need for your design. Next, you have oak barrels from 5,500 to 22,000, a very good option especially for those who have the NFTs to execute an oak barrel rush. And then there's steel from 47,000 to 188,000, which is good, but usually it's not worth it to get to steel production unless you are planning to make steel to build nuclear power. But if you wanted to scale this up, you would need to build a lot of steel mills. Those are expensive, so I don't recommend getting to steel production just to sell steel for a lot of cash. I would personally stick to wool or iron or oak barrels. Now, of course, you could sell oak barrels without NFTs. The reason I usually say you would want to do this with NFTs is because if you happen to have the Style and Ride NFT that gives you passive iron, then you can very easily scale up oak barrel production. That's why I say this is an NFT worthy rush. But yeah, you could create oak barrels without NFTs. Just craft the iron, craft the oak wood, and get passive energy from a power plant. So yeah, you could eventually transition to selling oak barrels for more cash. And of course, star boosts, wine cases will give you 100,000 stars each, making it the most competitive option for this competition. Now let's talk about the reward structure. This is the 3rd week of May Mayhem, so it will include a special reward structure, not the standard reward structure. And this special reward structure, they call it the Everyone is Welcome reward structure, and they did provide us with a chart right here. So it's going to reward Gala to the top 2,500 placements in the competition, as opposed to the 1,200 placements from the standard reward structure. It's going to also increase the amount of Gala you get from the placements in the top 1,200. In total, they said this is 31% more Gala compared to the standard reward structure. In addition to the Gala reward, there will also be an NFT reward for this one. They are going to reward us with the Thrifty Blueprint effect card. This effect card will reduce the material cost of building the winery by 40%, and it'll also reduce the cash requirement to build the winery. And the percentage depends on the rarity of the effect card, and the rarity of the effect card you get will depend on your ranking. All the information is right here, but basically if you're in the top 1200, you will get at least the rare effect card. And if you do not make a top 1200, then so long as you sell at least 10 times, it says, I believe you have to sell wine case 10 times, then you will qualify for the uncommon version of the effect card. The wine case is crafted in the winery, and it requires 2 Pinot Noir, 2 Chardonnays, and 1 wooden box, and it has a craft time of 40 seconds. Let's not waste any more time. You're here to see a competitive design for the upcoming competition, and I have created this no NFT required wine case design, and this one is doing 23.4 wine case per hour. I'm just gonna say at least 23 wine case per hour. I'm going to scroll through the production monitor so you can see everything for yourself. It is producing about 46.5 Chardonnay per hour and 46.8 Pinot Noir wine per hour, so that is enough to get it to 23 wine cases, and it is producing 25 wooden boxes, so it's going to be slightly overproducing those. I'm not going to get into every single craft here, but this is overall very well balanced. It is overproducing iron and oak barrels on purpose, and the reason for that is to keep it cash positive. Because one thing I did forget to mention that I'm going to go ahead and mention now is that there is 2 cash nerfs happening in this competition. The first item that is cash nerfed is the glass bottles, and the other item is the wine case. So glass bottles and wine case will only give out 1/4 of the cash that they usually give out. So I do not recommend selling glass bottles or wine cases to get all the cash that you need. If you're only selling wine cases, unless you're selling a lot of them, you will probably be cash negative and you will eventually run out of money. But don't worry, I've made it so that this design in particular is cash positive to give you an idea on what you need to do to have a cash positive design. I'm going to go over everything happening with this build, starting with iron, chromium, and limestone production. I have 16 logger houses, and they're in charge of collecting wood and oak wood from the trees. I have 26 tree farms, and they will take the wood either to the lumber mills or to the lumber yard if none of the lumber mills need them. I have 7 lumber mills, and these 3 in particular are making lumber. The lumber is used to craft iron, chromium, and limestone from the iron mines. There are 12 iron mines, 5 are making iron. There's going to be 2 of them on the west side, and then the 3 on the east side over here making iron. Then I have 4 of them making chromium, and they're alternating like so. And then the other 3 are making limestone. These mines also need passive energy. They are getting the passive energy that they need from the power plants, of which I have a total of 5 power plants over here. The ones making chromium and limestone need 3 energy, and the ones making iron only need 1 energy. And they also need water drums, so the water drums are being crafted from the water facilities, and I have 9 water facilities. So remember, water facilities don't cast any shade, so they are very convenient to have right next to the crops. Water drums and all the minerals that I mentioned all get stored in a warehouse, of which I have 3 warehouses, 1 on each side and then 1 in the middle. For oak barrel production, I have 13 oak trees. The oak wood gets delivered to the lumber mill or to the lumber yard, and I have 3 lumber mills dedicated to making oak barrels. These lumber mills do not need a water drum. That's why I don't have them next to the water pump, and they only need 1 energy as opposed to the other ones that need 2 energy. For glass bottle production, I have 1 forklift in charge of picking up silica from the sand mines. I have 3 sand mines. They are all on a green craft timer, and they have the 2 passive energy. They are on a green craft timer because we were given a desert biome, so as long as they have 3 passive sandy, they will be on a green craft timer. And in a desert biome, every single tile has at least 3 passive sandy. So the silica gets stored in a warehouse, and then it is used alongside chromium and limestone limestone to craft glass bottles at the glass factory, of which I have 3 glass factories. Next is Pinot Noir and Chardonnay production. I have 8 tractors and they are in charge of picking up the grapes from the vines. I have a total of 37 Pinot Noir vines and 16 Chardonnay vines. You may not be able to tell them apart from here, but don't worry, you'll be able to tell once I show you what it looks like on the visualizer. I have one silo where all the grapes will go to, and I have a total of 10 wineries by making Pinot Noir, which are going to be these 2 right here, and then these 3 across from the silo, and then these 4 are going to be making Chardonnay. So pay attention to the way I have the wineries rotated. The silo is facing the road, so it makes it easy for the wineries making Pinot Noir to get to the silo. And this is important because the wineries that are making Pinot Noir actually have to make more trips. These wineries require 6 grapes and then 1 glass bottle and 1 oak barrel, so that's a total of 8 trips, as opposed to the ones making Chardonnay, which only require 3 grapes, 1 bottle and 1 oak barrel, so that's a total of 5 trips. In addition, the craft time for the Pinot Noir is higher than the craft time for Chardonnay. That's why I have this ratio of 5 Pinot Noir and 4 Chardonnay wineries right here. And the ones making Chardonnay, these specifically are actually rotated, so they're closer to the silo since they're going to be going to the silo right away. It's more efficient than leaving them like this, because then they'll just have to go to the back, and it's basically just going to create a longer walking distance, and that's going to negatively impact your production rate as opposed to having them rotated like that. And then all of the wine and the wine cases will get stored in the storehouse, of which I have 2 of them. Now, another important thing about grapes is that they require 1 wood in order to craft. As you can see, they also require 2 water, and this is the case for both the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir. So in order to fulfill that wood requirement, you need to make sure that you always have some wood in your lumber yard, but you need to be careful because you also need to make enough lumber for everything else. So you also want to make sure you have lumber in your lumber yards. So how exactly do you accomplish this? Because I know some people have trouble getting this requirement fulfilled in order to make sure that all of their vines are crafting grapes. So you need to make sure that you have both enough loggers and enough tree farms and just the right amount of lumber mills so that you can always make lumber and you'll always have wood being deposited in the lumber yard. You also want to have at least 2 lumber yards, one where the lumber should go to, and that lumber yard should be closer to the mines, and then you want to have another lumber yard that is closer to the vines, because that is going to make it so that the tractors don't have to walk such a long distance to get the wood to give it to the vines. Basically, the loggers will not give the wood to the vines. The tractors must be the ones that do this. That's why you need loggers depositing wood into the lumber yard. And of course, the most important part, the winery making wine case is right here. 2 Pinot Noir, 2 Chardonnay, 1 wooden box. As I said, that's going to be stored in the storehouse. The wooden box is going to come from 1 lumber mill, which is this one right here. This has a pretty long craft time compared to the other crafts. So the craft time for wooden boxes is 2 minutes, and it requires both lumber and wood. The loggers will take the wood directly to the lumber mill. It could also try to pick it up itself from a lumber yard, which is fine, but most of the time the loggers will take the 2 wood to the lumber mill, and then the worker has to pick up the lumber from the lumber yard. It is pretty close to the lumber yard so that it's almost always picking up lumber, because you do want to make sure that you are always crafting wooden boxes, or at least crafting enough wooden boxes to craft all of the wine cases that you need. I have the standard gasoline production here with 2 power plants, 2 water pumps, the refinery in between those crafting gasoline, the refinery to the side crafting petroleum. I have the fuel storage over here closer to the one crafting petroleum, which is something I usually don't do. All that means is I need to auto sell petroleum so that the fuel storage doesn't get jammed with it. And of course I have the oil seep here providing passive crude oil to this refinery so that it's able to make petroleum without the need of manually crafting crude oil from oil pumps. I'm also having the 2 passive petroleum in this power plant to craft energy if I need to do so, which is convenient for whenever you need to get the energy to build all the other buildings instead of depending on wind turbines. And for the trade setup, I have 2 trade depots, one on each corner with a very long trade time of 3 minutes and 20 seconds and 2 gasoline per trade. And this is enough for like 99% of the time to sell everything. Yes, you will have times where your storages are too full and your trade depots are still selling items. So if once again, I'll scroll through my production monitor and you see how I lost some items. I haven't lost any important things like any wine cases or wine, but I have lost just a few grapes, water drums, iron. You can see that, even some gasoline. But keep in mind that I've been running this for 18 hours. So over the course of 18 hours, I lost very few things. So yes, you will lose a few items with just 2 trade vehicles. Of course, if you have the Express Depot NFT and you use another regular trade vehicle, just the trade depot, then you should have no issue selling everything that you need in enough time. And the last thing I'll mention is 3 optional spots. So I have 2 builder houses right here. You could also build a road and then have another building if you want to. And there is also an empty spot right here where you could also have a builder house. Originally, this was a water pump, but I had moved it over here to fill the requirement for these 2 water plants. Originally, this was a warehouse, but I moved it over here because it made more sense to have the warehouse here since I have to deposit wooden boxes and oak barrels into it. And rather than having these workers walk all the way over here, they only have to walk over here, which makes it more efficient. Yes, the mines may have to walk a little bit farther to get the chromium and limestone that they need to from this warehouse, or that they need to deposit to this warehouse. But overall, this process made it more efficient. Here's what the auto trade looks like. I have everything on here with a trade quantity of 10, 12, or 15. So I'm going to scroll through it so you can see how I have it set up exactly. Of course, wine cases are at 10. I also have wooden boxes at 10, but most of this stuff is at 12 to make sure that I don't sell it right away. So just in case one of the workers are going to the storage to pick up the item. And petroleum is important. I have that at 10. If you do not add petroleum to auto sell with this exact setup, you will jam up the fuel storage with petroleum, which is an issue. And the reason for this is because the refinery making petroleum is closer to the fuel storage than the refinery making gasoline. I also have gasoline on auto trade. This is to help with the cash flow, since I do want to make sure that enough items are being sold to keep this cash positive, which I'll talk a little bit more about later in the video. Also, another important thing is wood and oak wood. I do have both of those on auto sell. Wood is at 30. This is just in case for some reason there's just too much wood in the lumber yards, and I need to make sure that the lumber yards don't jam, so I also have space for lumber. That's basically the same reason I have oak wood here as well. I don't believe this ever gets auto sold, but this is just in case. All the oak wood should actually be used to make oak barrels. Here's what the build looks like on the visualizer. Total cost is 16.7 million. Wages are 31,100 per hour. And I do have a breakdown of exactly how the cash flow works on this. You are able to be cash positive with this design in particular. One of the reasons for that is because I'm being very careful with not using too many expensive buildings that have high wages basically, and also making sure that I'm selling an excess amount of oak barrels or iron to get extra cash. Wages are 1.87 million per hour, and this is of course without using any NFTs. If you have enchanted ornaments, it's going to help a lot with this situation. You are in this situation selling 23 wine cases per hour. That gives you 1.21 million cash. And then you're selling 25 excess oak barrels per hour. That's 550,000 cash. And then you're selling other materials like gas, iron, glass bottles, and maybe some other things like water drums or wood. This gives you about 150,000 to 200,000 cash per hour. So it definitely is cash positive based on all the things things that it's selling and the current wages. Now you can find the file to this visualizer on my Discord server, and an invite link to my Discord is in the description of the video. And of course, no NFTs are required to reach this production rate. So other things I want to talk about before I finish this up: I'm not using any nuclear power. This is on purpose, and although you could use nuclear power to improve this design even further and potentially get a slightly higher production rates, it is gonna require a lot more cash up front, since nuclear power costs 10 million to build, and you do need to build a steel mill to craft steel. That will set up at least another million, and it's going to increase your wages because, well, the wages of the nuclear power is very high, and you're probably going to want more than one nuclear power if you're trying to optimize this as much as possible in order to save yourself a spot or two. Now, is it actually worth it? I've been asking myself this, and I don't really think it is, to be honest, at least with the design I created. Now, if you're working on your own design and you think it is worth it, go ahead, but I personally don't think nuclear power is required nor really worth it for this competition or meta or design in particular. Now, if you wanted to improve this further, one thing that you would have to do is change this iron mine from making iron to limestone, because if you did notice, I had 4 of them making chromium and 3 of them making limestone. The reason for this is because I was overproducing limestone and I needed to overproduce iron to make sure that I'm making enough iron or oak barrels to make sure this is cash positive. If you decide to change this to limestone, you will craft more glass bottles, which means you can craft more wine, because I'm actually using up all the glass bottles in this situation. And if you do that, you will not have as much iron or oak barrels to sell, and I think you will be cash negative if you're not using any NFTs. Maybe don't do this right away unless you're sure that you're going to have enough cash to run it. And then after that, you will probably need some way to have more vines, which, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to accomplish that, but hey, anything's possible. So this is it for the design, and if I'm being honest, this is one of the most optimized designs that I have created. There's a lot of other designs that I've shared that don't require any NFTs and are very optimized, so it's going to be very hard to improve this any further unless you have NFTs to save you space or to reduce the craft times of things like the grapes or the tree farms. But I can pretty much guarantee that this build is going to get you into the top 2,500, and you're going to be able to earn some Gala, so long as you don't take forever building this, which this is pretty easy to build. This is one of the easier metas in my opinion, because there's not a lot of complicated parts. It's not crazy difficult to balance. I know people have issues balancing wood and lumber, but hopefully I've been able to help you out, or you got some information from this video. I didn't mention this, but the reason I have 2 lumber yards is just in case, like just to make sure I have enough wood and oak wood going into these and they're not overflowing into this one, which should really only have lumber. Sometimes lumber does go here, but that's fine. It gets picked up by the lumber mill making wooden boxes. But I think that's everything I have for this build. So it's a very good build, and I hope this is able to help you out with creating your own design or improving your own design. And if you found this helpful or informative, please leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing if you haven't done so. If you want to help support the channel, you can find links on how to do so in the description of the video. And as always, I appreciate your support and thank you for watching.